In the mid-1800s, New York City stood on the edge of profound change. Waves of immigrants from across Europe poured into the city, fleeing famine, political upheaval, and economic hardship. For them, New York symbolized hope, a place to begin again. In response, the city expanded rapidly. Housing developments rose, water systems improved, and municipal services began to take shape, laying the groundwork for the modern metropolis. For the immigrant working class, this was a chance to build a new life. For the city's elite, it was a moment of opportunity, capitalizing on cheap labor and skyrocketing real estate. As the city industrialized and its ports became global trade hubs, the demand for beauty and expression grew in tandem with commerce. One unlikely beneficiary of this transformation was the floral trade. By the 1850s, produce farmers from the outskirts of the city, places like Hoboken, Astoria, Queens, and Brooklyn, began growing flowers alongside their fruits and vegetables. Many of these farmers had deep horticultural knowledge, brought with them from Europe. Some transitioned entirely into floristry, sensing a growing demand in the city's markets. Their day began well before sunrise. With flowers carefully packed onto horse-drawn wagons, they crossed rivers and boroughs into Manhattan, arriving at the Washington Market near Canal Street, then the city's bustling center of produce and livestock trade. The market teemed with energy, the clatter of hooves, the cries of vendors, the aroma of fresh food and soil mingling in the air. On a typical day, 4,000 to 5,000 customers passed through. By early afternoon, 2 or 3 p.m., most florists and vendors had sold out completely. From these humble beginnings, a powerful movement was quietly blooming, one that would soon reshape entire blocks of Manhattan. By 1860, the flower trade had expanded uptown to Union Square, which quickly became a central hub for the sale of flowers and potted plants. What began as a modest addition to produce stalls was now transforming into a flourishing industry. One surprising but significant factor that fueled this growth was the city's notoriously poor sanitation. In an era before modern plumbing and waste management, New York was filled with the stench of horse-drawn streets, uncollected garbage, and overcrowded tenements. For those who could afford it, fragrant flowering plants became a natural solution, masking the foul air and offering a sense of freshness indoors. By 1870, a quiet but significant transformation was taking root in New York City. The demand was shifting from the decorative potted plants that once adorned Victorian parlors to freshly cut flowers, symbols of modern beauty, elegance, and occasion. This cultural and commercial shift led to the founding of the Cut Flower Exchange, a pivotal moment in the city's floral history. Nestled between 6th and 7th Avenues on 23rd Street, the Cut Flower Exchange formalized what had previously been a scattered, informal trade. It brought together growers, sellers, and buyers under one roof, laying the foundation for what would eventually blossom into New York's world-renowned floral district. By the turn of the century, 1900, New York was home to more than 100 wholesale cut flower companies and hundreds of retail florists. This explosion in floral commerce mirrored the city's own growth and cosmopolitan character. The scent of fresh blooms and the rustle of paper-wrapped bouquets became part of the city's morning rhythm. Horse-drawn carts and later trucks lined the streets at dawn, bringing in crates of roses, carnations, lilies, and ferns. As the industry expanded, many enterprising wholesalers left the exchange to launch their own ventures. This wave of entrepreneurial spirit sparked what would become a floral boom in the early 20th century, stretching across Manhattan from warehouses to storefronts. transforming entire city blocks into vibrant centers of color and fragrance. These weren't just flowers, they were economic engines, cultural statements, and emotional messengers. Behind every bouquet was a network of growers, immigrants, families, and artisans, all working in rhythm to meet the city's growing appetite for beauty.
Before we proceed to the next episode, we invite you to consider donating. Your support will help us establish permanent roots in the oldest flower district in the United States, right here in New York City. Donate today at flowermuseum.org. Together, we can preserve this vital piece of American history and ensure that future generations learn how floristry has shaped our communities, our city, and our nation. We, the New York City Historic Floral District Museum, proudly presents Part 2 of our film series, Seeds Are Sprouting.
At the height of the Gilded Age, when fortunes rose and inequality deepened, a quiet but powerful force emerged as a symbol of care, compassion, and community: the floral industry. Inside the city's grand department stores, marble palaces lit by gaslight and skylights, something remarkable would unfold. Once or twice a year, these temples of commerce were transformed into blooming sanctuaries. Towering palms reached toward the vaulted ceilings, ferns tumbled over iron railings, orchids, roses, and lilies stood in breathtaking arrangements, living sculptures of color and fragrance. Tropical plants softened the hard edges of the city, turning its stone and steel into a lush, imagined Eden. But this was no mere spectacle. These floral shows had a purpose. Each was a fundraiser, organized to lift New York's most vulnerable: the poor, the sick, the disabled, those left behind by progress. Pandemics raged, healthcare was scarce, and the city's social safety net was thin. In response, the floral community rose together. Florists, wholesalers, greenhouse workers, they donated their blooms, their labor, their artistry. They gave not just arrangements but acts of service. They understood their role, not just to decorate life, but to dignify it. And this spirit of generosity did not stop with charity. By the early 1900s, flowers entered another arena: the fight for women's rights. As the suffrage movement gained momentum, flowers became a bold and beautiful protest. Women across Manhattan and the outer boroughs filled carriages and motor cars with fresh blooms, selling them on street corners in markets. It was a campaign not just of petals, but of power. Every flower sold helped fund the cause, printing leaflets, organizing rallies, fueling the call for justice and the right to vote. Floral sales became grassroots resistance. Stems became statements. Color became courage. In those moments, floristry was no longer just a business. It became a movement, a silent ally in the city's most pressing fights, lifting the poor, empowering women, beautifying the struggle. This was floristry with a conscience, rooted in the soil of the community and forever blooming with purpose.
Thank you for watching the story of New York's historic floral district. As you've seen, the flower industry has done more than beautify the city. It has shaped its economy, politics, and communities in profound ways. In our next episode, we'll dive into how this industry became a vital lifeline for immigrant families, offering work, hope, and dignity at a time when there were no safety nets like social services, employment insurance, or health care. We can't continue to share and protect this legacy without your support. Your donation will help us establish a permanent home for the museum and preserve these important stories for generations to come. Visit flowermuseum.org to contribute and be a part of New York's living floral history. We present our next episode, Spring Flowers.
Between 1880 and 1900, a great wave of immigrants poured into New York City, transforming its neighborhoods and industries. In areas like Little Italy and the Lower East Side, many struggling families found unexpected opportunity in the floral district. There, entire households, often living in cramped tenement housing, sustained themselves by crafting paper flowers, a skill that required precision, patience, and teamwork. When illness or injury struck one family member, the other stepped in, ensuring the work and the income continued. It was this spirit of collective resilience that kept roofs over their heads and food on the table during some of the city's most challenging years. The flower industry became a quiet but vital thread in the immigrant survival story. It demanded little English, could be done indoors, and often allowed families to work from home. Children, grandparents, and neighbors contributed, turning kitchen tables into mini factories. Though the pay was meager, the work offered a rare form of dignity, the chance to contribute, to endure, and to belong. As the floral district grew, so did the reliance on these invisible hands, immigrant laborers who rarely stepped into the storefronts but made it possible for them to flourish. Their craftsmanship fueled a booming market for corsages, centerpieces, and decorative garlands that adorned events from uptown galas to working-class weddings. Today, their legacy lives on in the soul of the district.
We'll pause here for just a moment. As you've seen, this remarkable flower industry has not only shaped the growth of New York City, but continues to inspire its future. In our next episode, we'll sit down with some of the most extraordinary growers and florists, pioneers whose work helped lay the foundation for the industry as we know it today. With your generous support, we can bring this history to life through the creation of New York City's first and only flower museum. To help make this vision a reality, please visit flowermuseum.org and make your donation today. Together we can preserve this beautiful piece of New York's history for generations to come. Now allow me to introduce Charles Thorley, founder of the House of Flowers.
Charles Thorley was the founder of the House of Flowers. He was born the son of a farmer and florist in Hoboken, New Jersey. His life in flowers began not by chance, but by necessity. From the age of 7, he worked alongside his father at the markets, first with vegetables, later with flowers. Every morning before sunrise, they would ferry across the Hudson into Manhattan, down to Canal Street near Washington Market. His earliest days were spent delivering bunches of flowers and baskets of produce to every corner of a bustling, chaotic New York. The smell of the docks, the sound of horse hooves on cobblestones, and the sweet fragrance of flowers softening the city's hard edges, these early impressions stayed with him for life. At just 15 years old, Charles saved enough to open his own shop at 63 West 14th Street, becoming the youngest florist in New York City. He was in the right place at the right time. Ladies' Mile was rising as a shopping district, and customers took notice of his long-stemmed roses and his dedication to quality. His business thrived not only because of flowers, but because of people. Charles hired the most talented individuals he could find, many of them African American, at a time when others turned them away or paid them less. He believed in fair wages and dignity for all. That loyalty and mutual respect became the foundation of his success. As his business grew, he moved up to the flower market, smaller in space but busier than ever. To protect his staff in uneasy times, he made necessary arrangements with local authorities. Even though his shop operated within Ladies' Mile, the epicenter of fashion and society, prejudice lingered. Charles and his employees stood together through it all. Another of Charles's legendary florist shops bore a name that seemed to capture the very spirit of the Gilded Age, the House of Flowers. Nestled on the corner of Fifth Avenue and 46th Street, it quickly became a favored destination for New York's wealthiest families, the top 200 names that shaped the city's high society. In an era when flowers weren't just decoration but symbols of power, wealth, and taste, the House of Flowers stood as a beacon of refinement, artistry, and influence. Within the House of Flowers, he witnessed many stories of perseverance. Wesley Williams began there as a young worker. Years later, he returned determined to join the fire department. Charles gladly wrote his reference. Through hard work and community ties, including the support of men like J.P. Morgan, Wesley not only joined but rose to become captain. His brother Henry followed a similar path, becoming head porter at Grand Central Station, captain of the Red Caps. Both began their careers at the House of Flowers. Charles employed remarkable people, including Herbert D. Cummings, whose floral artistry caught the eye of Prince Henry of Prussia. In 1902, Herbert decorated the grand ballroom for the prince's reception and was later chosen as his personal florist during his visit to America. Such talent could not be ignored. Then there was his trusted manager, Rose Fallon, a woman which was nearly unheard of at the time. She left her studies to work for him and through sheer intelligence and tenacity became one of the first women in New York to amass great wealth through real estate, all while running the final shop on Broadway.
Before we continue, let us pause. The story of New York's floral district is not just about flowers. It's about the people who built something beautiful with their hands, hearts, and heritage. Many of their names are forgotten, but their legacy lives in petals, in sidewalks once fragrant at dawn, and in every bouquet that whispered, "Welcome home." Today, the NYC Historic Flower District Museum is working to preserve this history, not just as memory, but as a tool for empowerment. By training the underserved, by uplifting new entrepreneurs, by honoring the immigrant spirit and the dignity of labor, the museum is more than a tribute. It's a movement. Visit flowermuseum.org. Donate if you can. Help us plant the seeds that will bloom for generations to come.
The Rose King of America. Born on September 1, 1850, in Skane Lane, Sweden, a young man named Anders Neil Persson would one day transform the American floral industry. After immigrating to the United States, he changed his name to Andrew N. Pearson. In 1872, he planted the seeds of what would become a floral empire, a small nursery in Cromwell, Connecticut, known as A.N. Pearson, Inc., or simply Cromwell Gardens. By 1885, the Pearson family, Andrew, his wife, and their children, were selling flowers to New York City's floral district. What began as a modest operation soon blossomed into the largest commercial rose grower in the country. By 1918, their catalog proudly listed 500 employees and thousands of rose bushes in bloom. Their signature? A velvety red hybrid tea rose called Royalty, a long-stemmed beauty ranging from 22 to 30 inches. These luxurious blooms made up nearly 80% of the company's production. Roses weren't just grown. They were crafted, each one hand-graded on slow-moving belts, every stem inspected, every bloom measured. It was a labor of love and a legacy of excellence. By 1925, Pearson's nursery was the second-largest greenhouse operation in the world. In the 1980s, it was honored with the Century Farm Award, celebrating more than 100 years of growing history. But here's the twist. Over 100 years later, I was working out of a small studio in the Floral District, the very neighborhood Pearson once helped fill with flowers, when I kept bumping into someone in the hallway. He worked for a nearby coffee company. After over a year of brief hellos, we finally struck up a deeper conversation. That's when he told me he was Andrew N. Pearson's great-grandson, his name Anders Pearson. We both laughed in amazement, genuinely moved by the coincidence. The great-grandson of America's Rose King, working just steps away from a new generation of floral storytellers, in the very neighborhood where it all began. Some stories are planted long ago, and they still find ways to bloom.
We invite you to step back into the golden age of New York's floral district, where ambition, soil, and sunlight wove together stories of legacy and bloom. Among the many families who laid roots in this thriving world, one name rose tall above the rest, much like the lilies they were famed for. This is the story of the Malang family.
Immigrants of Dutch and German heritage, who arrived in America in 1862 with little more than a gardener's hands and a dream. By the 1870s, they had found their place among the florists of New York, and by the 1880s they were leading them. At the heart of this legacy stood Charles Malang, nicknamed by his peers and competitors alike as the Lily King. His flowers were more than beautiful. They were sought after, whispered about, and revered. Charles didn't just grow lilies, he defined them. Though his life was tragically cut short in a car accident, the Malang legacy didn't end there. His children carried the torch, continuing to supply the New York floral district with exceptional blooms for another 50 years. The Lily King may have passed, but his name still lingers in the petals of the flowers that once graced New York's finest shops and events.
As the floral district blossomed in the early 20th century, it wasn't only lilies that captured the public's imagination. Another flower, exotic, rare, and impossibly elegant, was beginning its rise to fame. And behind that rise stood a man whose name would become synonymous with luxury, a man whose blooms graced the corsages of high society, the grand halls of America's finest events, and even the hands of the First Lady. He was Thomas Young, the King of Orchids.
The King of Orchids. Thomas Young, of English descent, discovered his lifelong passion for orchids in 1885 while working at a modest nursery. What began as a simple fascination soon became a disciplined pursuit of horticultural science. By 1905, backed by private investors, Young had built something extraordinary: 6 vast greenhouses in Bound Brook, New Jersey, covering an astonishing 1,410,000 square feet. By 1912, those greenhouses produced 45,000 cattleya and other orchid varieties, each plant yielding 3 to 4 flawless blooms. His flowers traveled far beyond New Jersey, supplying florists and wholesalers across the United States. In 1917, Thomas Young's wholesale store opened in the heart of New York's floral district, at 57 West 28th Street. As the 1930s approached, orchids became the ultimate emblem of sophistication and status. And no name carried more prestige than Thomas Young Orchids, the premier hybrid orchid producer in America, renowned for beauty, innovation, and consistency. From the 1940s through the 1960s, his company mastered the art of marketing. Promotional flyers, tucked into florist boxes nationwide, showcased new varieties and offered styling inspiration for weddings, corsages, and grand events. The scale was staggering: over 1,100,000 orchids shipped each year to 43 distributors nationwide. In 1948, his flagship store moved just down the block to 47 West 28th Street, and his brand expanded to New York, Boston, Chicago, and Ohio. Thomas Young didn't just sell orchids, he made them a fashion statement. In that era, no woman attended a formal event without an orchid corsage. Even First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt placed her orders with Thomas Young. Through elegance, marketing brilliance, and unmatched quality, Thomas Young orchids became a symbol of luxury and defined an era.
Before Amazon, before modern e-commerce, there was one visionary who figured out how to send beauty through the mail. His name was John Lewis Childs.
And from a modest wooden building in Queens, New York, he would change the way America gardened. Born the son of a farmer, Childs was trained in horticulture by C.L. Allen in the late 1860s. In 1875, at just 25 years old, he struck out on his own, renting a small shop near what would become Floral Park. He sold plants and cut flowers to New York's bustling floral district. But he saw a bigger opportunity. Childs became the first in New York and one of the first in the nation to sell bulbs and seeds through the mail. Growing and cultivating them himself, he ensured control over quality, age, and color, delivering only the finest stock to gardeners nationwide. By spring of 1892, over 500,000 catalogs were sent to homes across America, inspiring gardens from coast to coast. Success allowed Childs to dream even bigger. He built not just a business, but a village. Floral Park grew to include 20 buildings, hotels, lumber mills, his own printing press. He created a public park, built the first school, and served as the first village president, later the mayor. John Lewis Childs didn't just grow flowers. He grew a town, a movement, and a legacy that still blooms in the history of American horticulture.
Before we continue, I want to pause and share something close to my heart: the NYC Historic Floral District Museum. Your support helps preserve the legacy of New York's floral industry while giving future generations a place to learn, connect, and be inspired. Every contribution fuels educational programs, community events, and the safeguarding of a history that has shaped our city for over a century. When you donate, you're not just giving, you're becoming part of the story. Donate today at www.flowermuseum.org. Now, speaking of stories, our next episode takes us inside one of the most treasured creative institutions in the floral world, M&S Schmalberg, the legendary fabric flower makers. We'll step into their workshop to witness how timeless craftsmanship and artistry come together, petal by petal.
During the liberation of the Mauthausen concentration camp in Upper Austria, a Jewish survivor was gently awakened by an American GI. "The war is over," the soldier told him softly. "You are free. Do you have family? Do you have somewhere to go?" The man answered quietly, "My whole family was killed. I have no home, but I have uncles in New York City, America." So began the journey of Harold Brand. Arriving in New York, he found refuge with his uncles, Morris and Sam Schmalberg, who worked in the fabric floral trade. Harold joined them, learning the delicate art of crafting flowers by hand. With time, skill, and determination, he saved enough to purchase the family business, Morris and Sam Schmalberg Fabric Flowers. The techniques he used then remain unchanged to this day. Each petal made one at a time, shaped in molds, pressed by hand, often at the cost of sore, even bloodied fingers. Hours of meticulous work went into creating exquisite blooms that captured beauty, grace, and artistry. For 4 generations, becoming theatrical blooms tailored for both performance and couture. This is not simply the story of flowers. It is the story of survival, resilience, and the enduring human spirit. Flowers in Harold's hands became more than decoration. They were an unspoken proclamation. We are here.
Our next chapter shows how tragedy can forge strength, not for despair, but for destiny. From the valley of loss, a boy will rise to the mountaintop, and in doing so, carry an entire industry to new heights.
The Carnation King. Mr. Zeller was among the very first to grow carnations from seedlings in America. Born in Alsace, France, tragedy struck early. He lost both parents to the cholera pandemic of 1832. Raised by his uncle in Germany, he learned trades of a florist, nurseryman, and landscaper. In 1841, Zeller left Europe behind. At just 23, he arrived in New York with little more than his skills and determination. The floral trade offered no work, so he labored through the winter as a gandy dancer on the Hudson River Railroad, earning respect for his grit and strength. When spring came, so did opportunity. Partnering with florist John Dial-Dews, Zeller built vast greenhouses in Flatbush, Brooklyn. Together, they pioneered American carnation cultivation, winning awards and renowned for their unmatched quality. By 1903, Zeller's glass houses, spanning 12,000 square feet, flourished with carnations, palms, orange trees, and primroses. A sea of blooms rose from what was then farmland. Today, those fields are gone, replaced by endless rows of brownstones. But the legacy of America's Carnation King still lingers in the blossoms that once transformed Brooklyn into a garden of glass.
The Floral community thanks you for watching this documentary, and we hope it has inspired you. The story of New York's floral district is one of resilience, creativity, and beauty, but its history still has no home, yet. We are building the very first NYC Historic Floral District Museum, a place to preserve this legacy, inspire future generations, and restore flowers to their rightful place in New York's story. This dream can only grow with your support. By donating today, you are not just giving, you are becoming part of history, helping us build a museum from the ground up. Together, we can plant the seeds of something lasting, something beautiful. Visit flowermuseum.org to donate and help us bring the museum to life.